Hey, it's Jason again from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. I'm here with a different kind of rose, and maybe you wouldn't call it a rose at all if you're being correct. It's this, the Lenten rose or Christmas rose, Hellebores ex hybridus, most of them are. And it's actually closer related to, say, buttercups, clematis, or globe flower in your garden. It's a herbaceous perennial, and one of the wonderful selling points about it is that it's cold season tolerant. It's good to about zone 4 or zone 5, but actually loves the cool weather, and that's something you need to think about and keep it at the top of mind when you're talking about the topic of this video, which is how to grow great hellebores. Is that their best growing season, the time that they're putting on most of their flowers, most of their foliage, and putting on most of their growth, is during when the season is very cold or very cool. So in this case, I'd be talking in my climate somewhere around February, March, and into the fall in September, October. Now, just to give you an idea of the range of flowers on this, it's just a wide range, different sizes and shapes. This one is tiny with almost black flowers. Now, I'm going to use the term petals, but actually these are modified bracts, I understand, which changes only one thing about them in terms of growing them, is that they last a lot longer. They, in your garden, normally if you have a flower that the petals emerge, they're pretty insubstantial, they're going to drop off pretty quickly. These bracts can last on the hellebore flower for a month, month and a half. They will fade, but they will still look great in your garden. They have a wide range of different petal counts, so this one has, I guess you'd call it very double, has tons and tons of petals. Some of them are more simple and only have one row of petals around them. Range of colors, yellow, white with speckles and freckles. So all sorts of different colors and shapes on the hellebore flowers. So I hope I've whetted your appetite. The next question is, how do you grow great hellebores? And I'll tell you that growing them in containers is okay, but they don't like to live in containers for a long time. Hellebores like their soil cool, just like clematis. They say keep the roots cool. That's the same with hellebores. So leaving them in a container is tricky because the container sides tend to pick up the sun and they warm up the soil, and so the hellebores don't appreciate that. They don't grow well during the summer when it's hot, and they don't like to have hot soil. So when you do them in containers, a couple of things. You might want to move your potting schedule. So if you're potting hellebores, normally a lot of perennials you would pot in my climate, in March and April. Push that back if you can, if it's practical, for your hellebores back into February. Get the early potting, get the advantage of the early cool season. Second thing is, plant them pot tight, like cram those pots together so that the sun coming down doesn't catch the edges of the pot or even the rim of the pot. So if you can put the soil a little bit higher so that it doesn't heat up that soil, that's really good. Keep them tight, and if you can provide a little bit of overhead shade, particularly as you hit the warmer end of the season, so if you get into June and July, if you could provide a little bit of shade, your hellebores would really appreciate that. And like I say, they don't like to be pot bound, so your time in containers is limited. I find that after a year or a little bit more than a year in a container, your hellebores really want to get into the ground and they start to decline if you keep them in containers. So for me, I'm not going to call it a short-term crop, but it's a crop you don't want to keep in the pot too long. Okay, growing them out in the landscape, they're getting the conditions they like. They like that cool root run of soil, but positioning wise, try to provide them that. So if you could give them, say, an east-facing location with shade behind it, that means they'll get the morning sun, afternoon shade. That would be just about ideal for hellebores. Otherwise, a little bit of high shade from trees. Not talking deep shade, but high shade would be really good. I do grow them in a semi-shaded location in my garden, and they do really well. Lots of blooms. Well, maybe I'll throw up a picture of one of my favorites here. Is swirling skirts, which I have out in the garden, and it's doing really well in a shaded location. Another thing you need to know about the care of hellebores is about fertilizer. So, like I say, they like to grow in the cool season. That's when you want to provide them with their most fertilizer. So even if you're potting them or keeping them out in your garden with slow release fertilizer, you'd like to hit them, if you can, with a liquid feed of something high in nitrogen right around the times that they're going into their highest peak of growth. So early in the season, February, March, late in the season, say September, October if they're in containers. Try to hit them with a liquid feed just to boost up those nutrient levels as they go into their highest growth of the season. The other thing you need to look for is the foliage. So there are a couple different groups of hellebores, and I know I'm oversimplifying by saying that, but you could sort of base them into this group here, which is the Hellebores X hybridus group, or orientalis they sometimes call it, which has glossy but thin mid-green leaves that are more deciduous. So they'll emerge with the flowers early in the spring, and then they'll get beaten up by insects and weather and so on. And so by the end of the season, by say when you get around to November, December again, these will be quite beat up. So I'll show you in maybe a clip that I'll put up here that what you want to do with those ones in the garden is when they look their tattiest, when they look their grossest, you want to strip them all off cleanly from the plant and then take those away from the plants. Don't let the foliar disease from one season spread back to the hellebores from the next season. Take those away, burn them if you can, or get them off send them away with your recycling, but don't let them go in the compost where they're going to end up at the base of this plant again. The second group here is more like these ones here. Now there's a whole bunch of hybrids that fall into this group they're sort of Niger hybrids with a more evergreen, more substantial leaf. And with that leaf, they can have these wonderful patterns on them. Sometimes Penny's pink emerges with a beautiful pink pattern on the leaf. And as I say, they treat them more like evergreens. So with these ones, you would never come around at the end of the season and strip off all the foliage. That would leave a pretty ugly looking plant. It's quite pretty here with both the foliage and the flowers doing quite nicely. So with these ones here, you would just take off old or damaged leaves as needed, and you wouldn't take them off as one whole fell swoop at the end of the season. Alright, I think that's everything I had to say about the hellebores, but if I've forgotten something, go ahead and hit me up in the comments down below, and I hope this answers some of your questions about how to grow great hellebores. Thanks.